So here I go. Still punching, no shorts like munchkins, lit like Halloween pumpkins. In no frontin', beat button. Let's do a little something, something. No frontin', it's my future. So like suture. Ease your gut, kombucha. Flexing, I might have to shoot you. Kick to the curb like boot you. No need to be uncouth, sir. Like seasoned, come cougar, sweet on my tongue, I spit fire like Ruber, #1 pick, booger. I remember when the world went crazy back in 1985, eyes wide, 11 years old, first mixtape, first kiss, music was music, but not like this. Bliss with a twist and a raised fist, mixed kid in a white space, define hate in a light way, identity first, self-esteem in the right way. Born and raised in the Bay, from DMC to cut colors like short, born to Mac, to all the cats flipping East Coast tracks way back on the block. So classic hip hop. I went to high school with Pac. That's a real mic drop. It don't stop. In school, oft hated, rarely affirmed and validated. Only one of my crew who made it, not unjaded. Hustling tapes on the graph, journeymen and legends and Hyro helped me who I am and know what I know. From IG disc to a life like this, production manager and artist, poor righteous teacher, counter curriculum reacher, A, B, C, D, wasn't getting it done. Hip hop scholastics was one of the first ones. So thank you for indulging me, and mad respect to the panel. Roz, I got a catch-up presentation. It was really exciting, and I can't wait to hear that mixtape and see that documentary. I have been writing rhymes since I was a kid, and much like Roz shared, it was a pathway for self-exploration and identity development, and to draw on some of Dr. Rap T's work. It gave me an armor that I needed to kind of survive in an oppressive system and in an oppressive world. And definitely in very oppressive schools. You know, I was a good student, but I often got kicked out of class for pretty normal behavior for a kid of color, for kids in general. And I was convinced for most of my life that my teachers hated me, because that was the experience that I had. And I thought most teachers and principals and school people were jerks, frankly. My aunt was a teacher, my cousin was a teacher. They used to try to recruit me all the time. I was really focused on having a career in the music business. I pressed a lot of early underground hip hop and reggae records here in the Bay with the music manufacturing company that I started, and just kind of kept plugging as an artist. And at some point when I got, ready to release my first album, I kind of realized that, if you don't have your business tight in this game, the only thing you get is a name, right? And so I started focusing a lot more on business development, and was doing really well. I was in my early 20s. I had a company that grossed almost $200,000, and I had a degree from UC Berkeley, and I thought I made it. Well, as we all know, this is a long game and a long grind. And when 9/11 happened, the bottom fell out of the music manufacturing industry, and I lost my truck and my apartment, and I was back at my mama's house. And she was like, "You're a grown ass man and you need a job." And so that's when I started teaching, and I started substitute teaching in Oakland Unified. And I saw just immediately that for, the majority of Black and brown kids in the system, the curriculum that we were trying to implement and what we were trying to do was like a complete disconnect. In fact, it was replicating systems of oppression. It was replicating colonized mindsets. It was replicating really oppressive frames about our culture and our language, and really leading to a negative self-perception and a negative identity. And while hip hop really helped me to first develop that armor. And then I think I'd say, you know, later a shield and a sword. I felt like the hip hop of the time, which I loved, but it was really actually supporting the kinds of negative self-perceptions and destructive behavior. And, you know, in my college age, I shouted out some underground crews that I'm connected to, and they helped me kind of reframe and repoint away from a lot of the kind of gangster music that was popular at the age. And I remember going to my friend, my homie, my brother, my co-executive director, Sunspot Jones from Mystic Journeyman at the time, and from Living Legends, and saying, yo, hey man, we got to do something for the kids. This is critical. This is life and death. Like, these kids is not connected to our schools or our curriculum, but they're connected to hip hop. They can't remember the ABC song, but they can remember all the lyrics to We the 504 Boys. And so that's how we created Hip Hop Scholastics. And, you know, what I have found throughout my career is much like Roz was sharing, using hip hop as a reflective tool, not just as a way to convey information, but as a way to really hold up a mirror to society, to ourselves, to who we are as educators, to who we are as students, is a really key reflective practice, and one that really supports a positive youth development and self-esteem and positive identity development. It's actually a healing tool that counters internalized depression. And internalized depression is that byproduct of growing up swimming in the sea of white supremacy culture, white dominant culture, whether you're in the UK or you're in South Africa, or you're in the United States of America, or really, frankly, any other colonized state around the world. And so I kept it with me in my toolkit and in my bag on my journey, and I became you know, I went from being a substitute teacher to a kindergarten teacher to a teacher instructional coach to a principal, and now I'm a superintendent. And I try to keep hip hop at the center of my work, and these kinds of reflecting and healing practices at the center of my work, and the work that I do with other educators and parents and kids. I really strongly believe that unless you know who you are in the world, right? Unless we really understand ourselves and how we show up culturally and linguistically, particularly in spaces where we have power, or that are spaces that are organized around systems of oppression and power and oppression dynamics, you gotta know who you are and how you're showing up. And following that, you have to know who the people you're trying to work with, how they perceive you. Because it's one thing to know yourself, it's a whole other thing to know and understand how you land, right? And so to me, those are the two key things that we can do in education to really begin to create this counter narrative and a counter curriculum, and one that is really healing to the systems of social reproduction that we've all been subjected to, and that frankly, hip hop was born out of a need for that counter narrative and that counter curriculum and that counter culture at its earliest days, when they were chopping the arts and chopping music programs and chopping dance out of public schools here in the United States in the late 70s and early 80s. Hip hop was a response of the hood. Because we know we need these things. We know we need forms of cultural self-expression to combat the sea and the soup in which we swim, in which we live in. And so much like Roz, you know, we use rhyme writing, and we have a protocol called 8 bars, and we use the Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey with educators. We ask them to take it so that they can really understand what they've been through or what they haven't. And then we ask them to write 8 bars about that experience. And when we've done this with groups of teachers, it has been an amazing healing experience, and one that creates community. I've had a bunch of people come to me at conferences where we've done this work, or with individual schools where we've done this work, and say, hey, you know what? I worked with this other educator for 13 years and I learned things about him today in a 1 hour, 2 hour session that I never knew about my colleague, or I never knew about myself. I've had other people come up to me and say things like, man, you know, I went to a ton of workshops here, but this was the one that created community, and everybody that was in your workshop for the rest of the rest of the seminar or retreat or training or whatever it is, like when we walk by each other, there's a different kind of connection than what I had with other folks in other sessions. And so hip hop is revealing in terms of our self-identity and expression. Hip hop is healing in terms of creating cures and remedies to the effects of systemic oppression and intersectional oppression. And hip hop is connecting, it creates community. And I think that's about 15 minutes, so I'll stop right there.